Hey everyone, welcome back to Corporate Decoder. Today we're diving into T-Mobile's proxy statement. Think of it like the cheat sheet for their annual shareholder meeting, but way more interesting because we're going to decode what it really means. Trust me, there's always a story hidden beneath the corporate jargon. This is Schedule 14A, a proxy statement. It's filed with the SEC when a company needs shareholder votes. The big day is June 6, 2025, where stockholders will virtually gather to elect directors and ratify their accounting firm. This document tells you everything you need to know before you cast your vote. First up, a quick summary. 13 director nominees are up for election and they want you to say yes to Deloitte & Touche as their accounting firm for next year. Think of this as the company's highlights reel. T-Mobile is boasting some impressive numbers for 2024. They claim to have led the industry in growth with 6.1 million new postpaid net customers and over 6.4 million high-speed internet customers. Plus, they are expanding their fiber footprint. It sounds like they're really working to stay ahead in the internet race. That strong customer growth has translated into financial flexibility. Their highest ever adjusted free cash flow means they can invest in the future and give money back to stockholders. In fact, they returned $14.4 billion to stockholders through share repurchases and dividends. T-Mobile is flexing with network awards. They've won all 5 overall network experience categories from OpenSignal. Basically, they're saying their 5G is bigger and faster than the competition. Let's talk about how T-Mobile is run. They're emphasizing good corporate governance. Deutsche Telekom, their controlling stockholder, has a lot of say, but T-Mobile assures us they have checks and balances in place to protect all stockholders' interests. These are some of the key corporate governance practices at T-Mobile. For example, they have annual board and committee evaluations, 13 director nominees, independent chairs of the audit, compensation and nominating committees. This looks pretty good and promotes accountability. Who's in charge? Well, it's a 13-member board, including Letitia Long, the National Security Director. According to their certificate of incorporation, Deutsche Telekom gets to pick 10 of those directors. It's also important to note that the board determined that Marcelo Clau, Thomas Dannenfeld, Shrikant Datar, James Kavanaugh, Letitia Long, and Teresa Taylor are independent directors. The chairman and CEO roles are separated, which is often seen as a good thing for oversight. Timotheus Hochschus from Deutsche Telekom is the chairman and Mike Sievert is the CEO. This way, no one person has too much power. Teresa Taylor is the lead independent director. She's essentially the leader of the independent directors, making sure their voices are heard and that the board is acting in the best interest of all stockholders. Want to get in touch with the board? You can send a letter to their corporate secretary, although they do say that anything hostile or unrelated to board duties won't get forwarded. The audit committee keeps an eye on financial reporting and risk management. Shrikant Datar is the chair. The compensation committee handles executive pay and succession planning. Kelvin Westbrook is the chair. They even have an independent consultant to help them make those decisions. The transaction committee evaluates potential mergers and acquisitions. Thorsten Langheim is the chair. Risk management is a big deal, and the board delegates oversight to different committees. The audit committee focuses on financial risks, while the nominating and corporate governance committee handles things like cybersecurity. It's a multi-layered approach to keeping things in check. The company doesn't do excise tax gross ups, guaranteed bonuses, single trigger payments, or significant perquisites for executives. This is pretty standard nowadays. How do the directors get paid? The non-employee directors get an annual cash retainer extra for being committee chairs and stock awards. They're also expected to own a good chunk of T-Mobile stock themselves, which aligns their interests with the stockholders. Let's talk corporate responsibility. T-Mobile is making strides. They've reduced total carbon emissions by around 33% since 2020. They are aiming to reach a net zero emissions goal by 2040. Also, they are investing heavily in Project 10 Million, aiming to bridge the digital divide by providing internet access to underserved students. T-Mobile emphasizes data privacy and cybersecurity. They're testing their systems and encouraging reporting of security issues, as well as publishing their political and transparency reports. Now for the proposals. First, the election of 13 directors. The board recommends voting for all of them. You can see some interesting background on the various members of the board, including years they joined the board, other public boards they are part of, as well as skills and qualification. For example, we can see Raphael Kubler has global telecommunication and expertise in business, management and leadership skills. Pros also too is about ratifying the appointment of Deloitte & Touche as their independent accounting firm. The board also recommends voting for this. Here's a look at the fees paid to Deloitte. Audit fees were $32, audit fees were $32, $40, and total fees were $32.08. Let's dive into how the executives get paid. A lot of emphasis is put on pay for performance. This means that a significant portion of their compensation depends on how well the company does, and this can be 90% of the entire package. They also use an independent compensation consultant to help set those pay levels, but in the end, the compensation committee makes the final decisions. They use a peer group of similar companies to benchmark executive pay. Their peer group includes companies like AT&T, Verizon, Disney, and Comcast. Here's a highlight of the executive compensation program. There is emphasis on pay for performance, independent consultant, and clawback policy. The company also has executive and director stock ownership guidelines. For 2024, the plan was as follows, with the target cash being 2.9 million, the target LTI being 7.3, for a total compensation of 10.2 million to executives. Compare that to the CEO, who has much higher equity-driven compensation. It seems as though compensation is largely determined by service revenue, total net additions, core adjusted EBITDA, and adjusted free cash flow. It makes sense that these metrics are a key component of their compensation plan. Their short-term incentive payouts max out at 200% of the target. It looks like the executives will be getting paid nicely. Gee, Michael Sievert is set to make over $7 million in this award. Long-term incentives are granted in the form of restricted stock units, RSUs, and performance-based restricted stock units, PRSUs. RSUs vest over time, while PRSUs depend on performance metrics like total stockholder return and adjusted free cash flow. Now let's talk about Nasta Cano, Ulf Ewaldson, Callie Field, Jonathan Fryer, and Michael Katz. It's important to check the backgrounds of the executive officers to understand more about how the company is being run. Here's what I think. T-Mobile appears to be in a strong position. They're growing customers, they're making money, and their network is winning awards. But as always, there are risks. Cybersecurity is an ongoing battle, and they need to stay on top of data privacy. Also, Deutsche Telekom's influence on the board could be a double-edged sword. It provides stability, but could also lead to decisions that favor Deutsche Telekom's interests over other stockholders. But overall, T-Mobile seems to be doing a pretty good job of balancing growth, profitability, and corporate responsibility. That's all for today's Corporate Decoder. If you found this helpful, give us a like, drop a comment, and subscribe for more deep dives into the world of corporate filings. Thanks for watching.